This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
TikTok on the chopping block. Good afternoon and welcome to the broadcast. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled today the TikTok ban will stand. That means TikTok will shut down, cease to exist unless it's sold by Sunday. Legal analyst Jonathan Turley.
For many of the justices, they were faced with the government, including the Biden administration, saying that there are serious national security risks here.
Today's ruling comes just hours after the outgoing president said he would not enforce the TikTok ban. Shannon Bream with Fox News.
And there is a provision within the law that says a president can delay this for 90 days if there is significant progress on a divestiture deal.
If a deal is to get done, it'll have to get done by Donald Trump, and soon. He is in favor of saving TikTok. So too is Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey.
TikTok has become an integral part of our lives, and that's 170 million Americans. That's over half of our population.
University of Minnesota law professor Alan Rosenstein does not believe a TikTok ban would violate the First Amendment.
It's a terrible practice for Congress to say, hey, these national security risks no longer apply because some users might get mad at us.
Some fear the Chinese government is using TikTok to spy on us. Once again, the U.S. Supreme Court ruling today in favor of the TikTok ban. It will cease to exist unless a new buyer is found within 48 hours. Changing of the guard, that's the other big story today. In just a few days, America gets a new president. And for just the second time in U.S. history, a former president will serve non-consecutive terms. Grover Cleveland was the first. Donald Trump is the second.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
Reporter Chris Pallone has more on security for Monday's inauguration.
Nearly the entire center core of Washington, D.C. will be shut down through Tuesday. 30 miles of fence around the Capitol and the National Mall. Concrete barricades will block the streets, and police will be using drones to keep an eye on it all.
And it will be bitterly cold on Monday. In fact, it will be the coldest it's been for any inauguration. Going back 40 years, still some 250,000 people are expected to flood to D.C. for the festivities. We will have live coverage of the inauguration of Donald Trump starting Monday around noontime. President Biden gave his final interview as president to MSNBC last night. He says the reason Democrats lost the election was he didn't do a good enough job selling the accomplishments of his administration.
Ironically, I almost spent too much time on the policy and not enough time on the politics.
Biden leaves office with just a 36% approval rating, according to CNN. Media critic Joe Concha.
He's leaving office as the most unpopular president in polling history since Richard Nixon, who had to resign. He is the absentee president, and for many Americans, Donald Trump's inauguration cannot come quickly enough.
Biden departs office having done the fewest news conferences of any of the past 7 presidents. The woman tapped to head Homeland Security in the second Trump term is being vetted today at her Senate confirmation hearing.
As a nation, we have the right and the responsibility to secure our borders against those who would do us harm. And we must create a fair and a lawful immigration system that is efficient and is effective and that reflects our values. President Trump was elected with a clear mandate. He needs to achieve this mission because 2/3 of Americans support his immigration and border policies.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem's been tasked by Trump to enforce the mass deportation of dangerous illegal immigrants. If confirmed, she would serve as the nation's 8th Secretary of Homeland Homeland Security. A couple other Trump cabinet picks could be seated as soon as Monday. They are John Ratcliffe for CIA Director and Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. But others, it won't be as easy. Fox News reporter Chad Pergram.
It may take weeks to confirm the cabinet. There could be a filibuster on the nomination of Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth.
Big news overseas. The ceasefire deal is back on in the Middle East. Correspondent Richard Engel in Jerusalem.
This has been difficult. It is going to be difficult, but we are getting there.
The Israeli cabinet expected to finalize the Gaza truce and hostage release plan by tomorrow.
Every Israeli is right now holding their breath until we see those hostages walk over the border, re-enter Israel, and hug their families.
Yael Eckstein with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. If all works out as planned, the first hostages could be released by Hamas as soon as Sunday or perhaps Monday, Inauguration Day. It's going to be a while before displaced homeowners can return to their homes or what's left of their homes in wildfire-ravaged Southern California.
Altadena is such a beautiful community. I just hope it comes back to what it used to be.
Correspondent Matt Finn.
36 people are still reported missing, and search and recovery efforts are slowing the ability to turn on power and water. Heartbroken and exhausted people are pleading to return to whatever is left of their properties. But the LA County Sheriff says it will be at least a week for most.
27 lives have been lost to the flames thus far. With just days left in office, President Biden announcing today a new round of clemency.
President Biden is commuting the sentences of nearly 2,500 people convicted of nonviolent drug offenses. The action announced this morning gives Biden the presidential record for most individual pardons and commutations.
Correspondent Steve Kafin, the latest test of the SpaceX Starship rocket ended with mixed results overnight. The booster was successfully recaptured at the launch pad in Texas, but the rocket itself blew up.
It appeared to break up right as it was reaching space. We don't yet know why. SpaceX promises an explanation after they look at the data, but they confirm the vehicle came apart for some reason.
Space consultant Bill Harwood says the plan is for Starship to eventually carry people to the moon. Hollywood remembering the late director David Lynch today. His film credits include the 1980 classic, The Elephant Man.
I am not an animal! I am a human being!
Lynch died yesterday at the age of 78.
You couldn't mistake a David Lynch film for anybody else's. His work had his fingerprints all over it. That's part of what made him special.
Film critic Leonard Maltin, America remembering Mr. Baseball, legendary broadcaster, actor, pitchman, and former big leaguer Bob Uecker, dead at the age of 90.
Vaughn into the windup in his first offering. Just a bit outside.
That famous line from the 1989 movie Major League. Uecker's fans knew him for his sharp wit and self-deprecating sense of humor. ESPN baseball analyst Jason Starr.
What a baseball life that Bob Uecker lived. He played 12 seasons of professional baseball, and that'll be like the 8th thing that people remember about him. This is a guy who had one of the great baseball lives ever.
Bob Uecker broadcast baseball games for the Milwaukee Brewers for 54 years. He was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2003. Still to come on the Noon Report, Unplug and Play, dating app scam, and Zero Eyes to the rescue.
Good afternoon, I'm Kevin Williams. Though the temperatures are trending up now, those temperatures are going to tumble big time Sunday and especially early next week. Forecast details are coming up.
All right, Kevin, going to be downright cold when the Bills host the Baltimore Ravens in that big AFC football playoff matchup Sunday night in Western New York. Buffalo quarterback Josh Allen.
Just taking it one day at a time and then controlling what I can control. And it's attitude and effort, and it's how we come out here and just try to put our best foot forward and try to execute on Sunday.
Bundle up if you're headed out. Wind chills will be in the single single digits at Highmark Stadium for kickoff. Child care experts are giving a thumbs up to New York Governor Kathy Hochul's Unplug and Play initiative. It aims to get kids off their phones by funding playgrounds, community centers, and sports programs. Binghamton area psychologist Dr. Josh Felver says an addiction to smartphones negatively impacts social skills.
What I see in my clinical work and working with communities is that in general, kids aren't having the same kind of opportunities for developing social skills. If you're interacting through a cell phone, you don't have to have a face-to-face interaction.
The governor unveiled her Unplug and Play initiative during Tuesday's State of the State speech.
This is part of our continuing effort to make youth mental health a top priority.
Experts say children ages 8 to 12 spend on average 4 to 6 hours every day staring at screens. A shocking escort scam is sweeping across Erie County, New York. It's gotten to the point that police have had to issue warnings about using online dating apps.
We don't want other people to become victims of this crime and, the potential violence that could occur.
That's Erie County District Attorney Mike Kane. He says victims are getting robbed and even blackmailed when meeting up with who they think is a date.
It's been a couple of women, young women, and a number of males, and it's happened, half a dozen or so times over the course of the last few months. We think it's the same group of people mixing in and out.
He says what starts as an internet encounter quickly turns into a calculated setup.
And then when they would get there, they would either be robbed or this group of people would attempt to rob them.
Kane says his office is working directly with dating apps to get the perpetrators of these crimes behind bars. The South Williamsport, Pennsylvania School Board has just approved a new firearm detection system that uses artificial intelligence. It's called Zero Highs. It's a Pennsylvania-based company, and it's being employed right now by hundreds of school districts all across America. Its software is connected to existing security cameras, and it can detect firearms within seconds of them being out in the open. A deal to reopen a recently shuttered Pennsylvania hospital. That deal may be unraveling, as we hear from Family Life's Brian Query.
A new deal to reopen bankrupt Sharon Regional Medical Center in Mercer County has run into a snag after a nonprofit refused to waive a $25 million claim against the owners of the hospital buildings and other real estate. The hospital has been shuttered since January 6th, which left 850 out of work. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. Giant Eagle Grocery Stores is reporting the discovery of credit card skimming devices inside 2 of its western Pennsylvania stores. The skimmers were found at stores in Greenfield and McKeesport last month. Giant Eagle's already contacted customers whose personal information may have been compromised. An uptick in coyote sightings has some people in North Tonawanda, New York, concerned about their safety and the safety of their pets. There have been at least 6 sightings in recent days. Wildlife experts say coyotes are drawn to unsecured trash.
Coyote in your yard, just open the door, bang some pots and pans, yell at it. You can throw something at it. That just kind of keeps them moving, keeps them from becoming too established in an area. You've got a bird feeder out. It's probably a good idea to take the bird feeder down. That does attract squirrels and other small mammals that the coyotes are eating, so it might make them come into your yard more. With garbage too, or if you're feeding pets outdoors, try to remove any pet food.
That's some good advice there from Mandy Watson, a wildlife biologist for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Sports is next. We call it the 2-minute drill, right here on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the New York Rangers came back strong in the third period to defeat Utah 5-3, scoring 3 times in that final period. Artemi Panarin scored twice in the win. Sam Carrick chipped in with 2 assists, one of which was on Chris Kreider's go-ahead goal. The Rangers have now won 3 of 4. The Philadelphia Flyers continue to play quality hockey, taking down the New York Islanders 5-3. Sean Coutier, Garnett Hathaway, and Morgan Frost all lit the lamp in the second period to wipe out a 1-0 deficit. Cam York and Noah Cates added third period goals. Bo Horvat, Matthew Barzal, and Anders Lee scored for the Isles. Other winners on the ice were the Leafs, Caps, Lightning, Wings, Jackets, Blues, Predators, Canadiens, Jets, Oilers, and Kings. On the hardwood, the Kings, Clippers, Thunder, Suns, and Pacers all picked up victories. A sad note, Mr. Baseball is gone at the age of 90. Bob Uecker, legendary broadcaster, bad Major League Baseball player, and one of the funniest men in pop culture, has passed away. His wit and humor will be missed. And they're going to play some football this weekend as the divisional round of the playoffs kicks off. Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs start things off on Saturday, taking on C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. Following that game tomorrow will be the Washington Commanders playing the Lions in Detroit. On Sunday, the Eagles host the L.A. Rams, and then the game that many of us are interested in has the Ravens coming to Buffalo to play the Bills. And let's not forget, the college football championship game happens on Monday night. That is a look at sports.
All right, lots to look forward to in sports. Thank you, Randy. And still to come on the Noon Report, Polar Vortex on the way. So too is the Capital Connection crew. And at the end of the broadcast, Christmas decoration procrastinators.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. According to an Associated Press article from November, there was a significant surge in demand for long-term birth control, for sterilization, and for chemical abortions following the election. One company saw a 966% spike in sales of so-called emergency contraception and abortion pills in just 3 days after the election. The demand for a value pack of one particular type of morning after pill increased by 7,000% in a week. And Planned Parenthood also reported an explosion in demand for abortion pills, for long-acting contraception like IUDs, and for vasectomies. The whole reaction was strange, really, considering that the Republican Party had gutted their platform on abortion, and President-elect Trump had repeatedly promised to not block access to abortion pills. In fact, even the AP admitted that, quote, it's unclear what, if much, will be done regarding access to contraceptives of any kind during the second Trump administration, end quote. The most obvious reason for all of the fear-mongering, the stockpiling of pills, and scheduling of appointments is just politics. The left regarded so-called reproductive health care as their best and perhaps their only winning issue. So, Vice President Harris repeatedly threatened that Trump and the Republicans would take away these so-called women's rights and push a national ban on abortion. And after a decade of Handmaid's Tale references from media and politicians, many Americans had been convinced of an impending theocracy that would enslave women and force them into pregnancy. And by the way, the Trump campaign obviously agreed that abortion was a losing issue for them and the Republicans. Still, many pro-abortion Americans are running scared and screaming right now, though it's not clear from what. All the pro-choice prophylactic panic resembles that proverb that says the wicked flee when no one pursues. Apparently, this is just another way that the sexual revolution has disconnected people from reality. The other ways that our bad ideas about sex have divorced us from reality are many. Separating sex from procreation, redefining sex as a merely recreational activity, centering sex as the source of human identity, freedom, and dignity, treating children as a commodity, disconnecting parents from their obligations to their children. The list of consequences and victims of this full-on social experiment and denying reality just goes on and on. As Bethel McGrew concluded in a World Opinion piece back in November, the left-wing meltdowns about abortion revealed, and I quote here, a spiritual darkness far deeper than the political discourse of the day. Rather, these reactions revealed a generation unmoored from family, from community, from all of the old tools of sense-making that used to ground a young American's identity, end quote. In other words, for many Americans, all the panic wasn't an act. Lacking the security and the hope once provided by stable families, by strong communities, by faith, they instead grasp onto so-called rights for meaning and validation. And if those rights are all one has, and if those rights come from Washington, then an election really can feel like the end of the world. Christian, this is our mission field. These are the neighbors that we're called to love. This is part of the brokenness we're called to restore. America's filled with image bearers that have long been at war with themselves and with reality. The separation of sex and pregnancy both represents and worsens a deep cultural damage that has taken generations to inflict, and it will, by the way, take generations to repair. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you. Outside next, Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Clouds, some intervals of sun, and high temperatures in the 30s, dropping back into the 20s tonight. Tomorrow, cloudy, wet snow arriving mixed with rain, a high in the 30s to near 40. Much colder Sunday, mainly cloudy with some snow or flurries, and temperatures ending up in the teens on our way to some truly frigid conditions early and mid next week.
All right, Kevin, thank you. It is Friday, folks, the 17th of January, and this is the Noon Report on Family Life. And welcome back to another edition of Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are, as always, Jason McGuire at New York Families and Michael Geer with the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Well, gentlemen, let's jump right in. Jason, a busy week in Albany. Governor Hochul delivering her fourth State of the State speech back on Tuesday. What was the big takeaway from her address this year? Did she say anything that surprised you?
You know, if I had a nickel for every time I heard the word affordability come up this week in Albany, I think that's the issue right now. Yeah. Democrats, including Governor Kathy Hochul, seem to have gotten the message of the last election, and so they are trying to position themselves as moving to the center. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance and pageantry in the State of the State this last week, but I will tell you this, that the message was there too on affordability. So, you know, the proof will be in the pudding. The governor is facing a re-election in 2026. She's running scared right now, and I think that means she's giving away the store. She's having an Oprah moment with a car for everyone.
Yeah, I guess. When was the last time a Democrat was advocating for a middle-class tax cut like she did in that speech, Jason?
Oh, you know, it's really stunning. I mean, in fact, the location of where the State of the State was held was a return to the Pataki years. It's the same location where Governor George Pataki used to hold his State of the State addresses. And so it really takes us back just a very different time in New York. And it'll be interesting to see where the governor goes and where the legislature lets her go in the rest of the session.
Oh, they're off and running as well in Harrisburg, Mike. I know that in the House especially, you're watching a number of bills, dozens of bills, in fact. I think you told me there are over 30 that would radically promote and expand abortion. Can you be more specific as to what this dangerous legislation would do if passed?
Yeah, so in the last session, which just ended, at the end of last year, there were dozens of these pro-abortion bills that were introduced. And now here already in the first days of the session, really already out of the gate, we have a major pro-abortion bill introduced by House Democrats, 30 legislators, all Democrats, signing on to the bill as co-sponsors. And that's House Bill 26, which they've euphemistically titled the Reproductive Freedom Act. This bill would repeal and replace all aspects of Pennsylvania's Abortion Control Act, replacing it with a wish list of the pro-abortion lobby. It would effectively allow for abortion on demand throughout all 9 months of pregnancy. It would remove the current law prohibiting abortions after 24 weeks, no more parental notification, no conscience or religious liberty protections for doctors or other medical professionals who don't want to participate in abortion. This is terrible legislation. We'll be fighting it every step of the way and do anticipate additional bills will be introduced by the House Democrats.
All right. Well, Jason, we understand there will be another push this session to legalize doctor-assisted suicide in New York. You have beaten this back a number of times over the past decade. I thought it was interesting in Canada, where it's legal, 1 out of every 20 deaths is the result of doctor-assisted dying. What most concerns you when you think about New York permitting physician-assisted suicide?
Yeah, the push is real and it's intense. We saw the activists for assisted suicide already in the Capitol before session started. started, just knocking on doors and trying to connect, and that has only continued as session has got underway. What concerns me is really twofold. One is assisted suicide just permanently alters the doctor-patient relationship. If you now have a doctor that is willing to have a conversation about ending one's life rather than trying to preserve life, that permanently alters health insurance structures, doctor-patient relationships. But on a spiritual level, it's deeply concerning as well, because it just continues to show that we are wandering away from the fact that we are created the image of God and protecting life and all of its intrinsic value.
Yeah. Well, that segues well to our next point, Michael. Sanctity of Human Life Sunday is coming up just a couple days. This Sunday, January 19th, of course, there's the big National March for Life next week. What can people do in Pennsylvania this year to support life?
Well, it's vital that they do take a role in supporting life in Pennsylvania, given the anti-life push in our culture these days. Our team has created a Sanctity of Life Church Toolkit for this Sunday, January 19th, and you can get that through our website, free at pafamily.org. This Church Toolkit provides guidance for pastors, churches, and individuals to protect and promote life. And, of course, we always encourage support for your local pregnancy resource centers, whether here in Pennsylvania or in New York, through your finances, prayer, and volunteering. And, of course, we encourage being responsible citizens, using your voice to oppose bills like the one I talked about, House Bill 26, the so-called Reproductive Freedom Act. And we encourage people to join the National March for Life on January 24th, and then the Pennsylvania March for Life coming up later this fall in Harrisburg.
All right. Well, energy issues is not a topic we discuss a lot, but it is important, especially with a new administration in power in just a couple days. Jason, Governor Hochul's war on energy has many wondering how this trickles down to the average New Yorker. We're already hearing that home heating costs will go up. Gas prices may go up by as much as 22 cents a gallon. Why this rush to force electrification down the throats of New York State residents?
Well, again, going back to the state of the state, we have seen this major push for what you've stated, and we do see prices increasing, and yet there was a crack in the state of the state where it appears the governor may be backing off of some of these proposals. Again, I don't know if the legislature is going to let her do that, but when there's now talk of perhaps nuclear energy and different things coming to our state, the governor has really got a foot in both sides. And one, she has to show progressive values, and she's trying to show that she is all aboard the climate change train and wants to ride that. But on the other hand, she recognizes that when families are facing increased costs for basic things like utilities, they're less likely to elect her again. And so she's trying to have it both ways. And I don't know how she's going to survive with a foot in each camp.
Yeah, they call that being stuck between a rock and a hard place. And Michael, House Democrats are warming up to the idea of energy exploration as well, that maybe the country's second largest natural gas producer should continue producing natural gas. Just a thought. But they said some things, the chairwoman of the House Energy Committee said some things this week concerning oil and gas exploration. Did that shock you at all?
Well, I think it appears that, as Jason said earlier with the governor there in New York, I think it appears that some of the Democrats here in Pennsylvania are paying attention to what the voters were communicating in the elections back in November, and to the idea that people, no matter their party registration, want to be able to afford to stay warm on frigid January days like today. So, I think that's what, this Democrat chair of the Energy Committee, House Energy Committee, she's from Philadelphia, in support of expanded energy production, would have been a surprise maybe a year ago, but given the results of the election and the cost of energy and the fact that people want to stay warm, maybe it's not quite so much a surprise.
Yeah, and well, the next time we talk, guys, President Trump will have assumed office for a second time. I wanted to ask you both, in what ways does the change in leadership in the White House make the work that you do easier, and what ways would that complicate the work that you do? And Jason, I'll start with you.
Yeah, Bob, I often describe it as a pendulum that swings. And so when something moves at the federal level and it swings, we'll say to the right, there's a backlash here in a deep blue state like New York. And so when it comes to issues like immigration or perhaps pro-life policies that may move at the federal level, you're going to see some pushback here in the Empire State. On the other hand, we may see some things like educational choice that could move at the federal level that I'd never see here in New York. And so there's some optimism there for what may happen at the federal level.
Yeah. How about you? I know the president-elect, soon-to-be president, has already promised to sign hundreds of executive orders to undo the policies of the past 4 years. But Michael, the work that you do at the PA Family Institute, how does having Trump in office change things for you?
Well, I think some of the themes that he ran on, especially, for example, girls' sports and protecting that, which we already see some action in Congress on that issue, is also going to have some sort of coattail effects here in Pennsylvania. I think it will provide some boldness to politicians who typically have wanted to stay away from some of those issues to be more vocal about them and feeling like they have the president's back, they have the voters' back, and they can proceed on some of the issues that we care about.
All right, that'll have to be the last word this week. But if you want to hitch a ride to the March for Life coming up later this month in our nation's capital, Michael, there is information on your website where folks can register. What is that, if you would, sir?
PAFamily.org.
And read all about it. What did Governor Hochul say in her State of the State speech this week? Jason, you have information on your site as well. What is that, sir?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
All right, great show as always, guys. Thank you very much. Capital Connection comes your way every Friday during the Noon Report. Now, you can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature as well as all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. More moderate conditions are ahead on the temperature front today and tomorrow. The disturbance tomorrow, though, will bring another round of precipitation. We'll watch the coast for a storm that's going to form Sunday, and it may clip areas east of I-81, especially in Pennsylvania, with snow on Sunday. The rest of us, it's flurries and bitter cold that will be arriving, setting the stage for the coldest air of the winter to date, early and mid next week. For this afternoon, clouds, some intervals of sun, and high temperatures in the 30s, dropping back into the 20s tonight. Tomorrow, cloudy, wet snow arriving mixed with rain, a high in the 30s to near 40. Much colder Sunday, mainly cloudy with some snow or flurries, and temperatures ending up in the teens, on our way to some truly frigid conditions early and mid next week.
All right, that ought to be a ton of fun. Thank you very much, Kevin. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. And finally at noon, a new poll says some of us are slow to wrap up the holidays. Bree Tennis has our report.
While there's no official rule as to when holiday decorations come down, most will get put away on January 6th. That's the actual end of the 12 days of Christmas. But a recent one poll says 45% of us still have them up, and 21% of us will leave them up till the end of the month. But Psychology Today says it's okay. You're not a monster, even if you leave them up year-round. It just means you're extra festive. I'm Bree Tennis.
Festivus for the rest of us. Thank you very much, Bree. If you're a fan of Seinfeld, you know what I'm talking about. Hey, that's all the time we have today. Friday, January 17th. As always, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful weekend. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at FamilyLife.org.